Hey, Amy Snell, thanks so much for joining today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, could you please start by introducing yourself and your work?
Yes, I'm one of the founders and directors of the Charlotte Mason Educational Center, and we're a nonprofit that delivers a pre-K through 12th grade curriculum for families really now all over the world and all 50 of the United States. But we have this unique model based on the philosophy of Charlotte Mason. Perhaps we'll end up talking a little bit about her later, but we have a unique model where we really try to think of what is it that parents need for their formation to fulfill their role as the primary educators for their children. But I am the mom of five kids. Two now have graduated, and I still have three daughters at home from 10th grade down to third grade that are in our homeschool. And we just started with the Charlotte Mason philosophy from the beginning and continued all the way through. Before homeschooling, I had done graduate work in English. I taught AP English in a great public high school. I taught at the college level. So some people are, surprised that we ended up going this route of homeschooling. But there was this time before we even had children that we were at church and we met a family that who we thought that their children just seemed that we called it they had bright eyes, and we wanted to know what was unique about their family, and they said that they were Charlotte Mason homeschoolers. So that set me on a path of trying to find out more about that educational philosophy. We then moved to the Philadelphia area, and I started reading groups, trying to just get others interested in Mason's thought, and that led to us starting together the Mason Academy, which was sort of a hybrid school at that time, where families gathered for a variety of subjects. But then we ended up moving to New Jersey. So we launched another TMA, and we just continued to grow. And as we built our curriculum and resources, more families wanted to be a part of it. People were telling friends and family members around the country. And so we ended up launching the CMEC publicly. And it now has, like I was saying, thousands of children really in all 50 states and in 20 countries. So it was nothing that we
Wow.
expected. We really just grew organically. And here we are today.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize it was so big. And I don't think it's surprising at all that you went from being a teacher to homeschooling. I mean, if anything, being a public school teacher would drive people towards homeschooling because you know how broken the system is. I have a close friend who's a public school teacher, unfortunately. So I also know from have an inside perspective there. But can you explain a little bit about what the Charlotte Mason philosophy is and how it differs from other forms of homeschooling?
Yes, well, like I was saying, at the CMEC, we really are dedicated to putting Mason's philosophy into practice. So she was a British educator and philosopher in the late 1800s and died in the 1920s. She began her career as a teacher at the age of 15 and
Oh,
began right away at this early age developing different these prints that kind of became what's known as her 20 principles, and went on to start trying to share these ideas with others and became really connected with professors at Oxford, Cambridge, as well as different philanthropists, different even archbishops. And so she started training governesses, and these families were implementing then her philosophy, and she started building out a curriculum. And then middle class families who couldn't afford a governess said, couldn't we do this? Can't you train us? And this really led to um, the curriculum. You could join, a family could join her union school and get the curriculum, as well as then a full teacher training college. They had a journal that was published for over 50 years. So we have all of those articles where various educators, as well as those implementing her philosophy, headmasters would write in on various topics. They would get psychologists to write in, just different. The archbishop would write, or things like that, on religion and teaching children in that way. So it's really an eclectic thing. And so at the time of her death, there were over 300 schools in Britain and 80,000 students in homeschools around the world. So that is something that many people don't know and realize, and don't even realize the heritage she had in England, but even around the world. So we just feel honored then to pick up the torch that they had and to dive into it ourselves, of trying to really bring her ideas into our modern setting.
Okay, and what are some of those philosophical principles that she had? I think you mentioned 20 principles, but what are the ones that you particularly think distinguish this approach from other approaches?
Yes, well, at the CMEC, we just say our central values are taken from Mason, and her primary thought is that children are born persons. And of course, we all would agree to that on face. But if we think about, no, really, so much of the way we're treating children, either we think, oh, they're sponges, or they're just a machine, they're this tool that we need to sharpen. And so Mason says, if we start with this idea, then we want to ask some further questions of, what are the capabilities of a person? How does a child assimilate knowledge? What sorts of a program of study should a person have? And that led Mason to say that really a child has that natural desire for knowledge, and it's only if we get in the way with things that we think are helping the child, by either spoon feeding them, giving them too much pre-digested material like textbooks. She thought we needed to give them direct access to the great minds in books, and then real things like art and music, handicrafts, nature study, hands-on work, and math and science. So it's a full curriculum that goes beyond just, the great books, into what she called living books, that living persons should be reading for ideas. And then you can find that in a book that has living thought. And so then the curriculum has a very different feel, I think, than what we see in really any other paradigm, from traditional public schools of what we're seeing today, even to the various philosophies that
Mhm.
exist.
Okay. Do you have any hope in the public school system?
Hmm. Well, as a former public school teacher, I know that the teachers are very dedicated to, so many of my colleagues loved their subject and did care for the students. And yet, I left the public schools when it was just really beginning to be so much of an emphasis on testing,
Mm.
standardizing a curriculum, and kind of lowering things. I was really teaching great literature to students, and that all has really
Mm.
changed. So, it is part of our mission to help teachers learn more about how they could use Mason's, not just, the curriculum, but she has these living methods that tie together with her philosophy. And that's this art of narration. And we think that can be used in a science class, in composition, in history. So it really, I think if people could know more about her approach, it could really change the experience of the teacher and the child.
Well, what you described sounds kind of like common sense that, okay, the child is a person. Let's get the child in touch with some of the greatest sources. That's historically in the liberal arts tradition been how people learn, and then focusing on actual learning rather than just regurgitating it for a test. So I hope this is not too revolutionary, although unfortunately
I
maybe it
know it
is.
really is, recovering and giving children
Mm.
back to participate in a heritage that is theirs of folk songs that have been sung for hundreds of years, art that was studied and known, poetry, recitation. So many of these things were long traditions that have sadly been lost in our modern educational system.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges you face or have faced in implementing this vision?
Yeah, I think that homeschooling itself is very demanding, and that we have this mission to help. When we were working with our local families and friends, and we could see, all right, did they need to do this well? It's a wide array of things. Like sometimes the homeschooling mom needs to be able to figure out just how to run a good schedule, a good timetable to fit all of these things in. Sometimes it's not so hard to figure out how to teach Plato or Plutarch or Shakespeare. It's how do I do that and get laundry done and actually feed these children as well. So we do a lot of practical support alongside of doing different ways of training parents, from
Mhm.
holding retreats, holding monthly educational courses. We gather at the beginning of every term with each of the major grade levels and talk about the books we're going to be using, and really giving families a sense of why these books were chosen and how to use them. Trying to offer this kind of responsive support to the things that families face on an ongoing, just in a very practical day to day way. And then also giving them, Mason says, this phrase that was important during the Victorian era of like this kind of high thinking can lead to really plain living. And so that if we can give this vision and these principles of what education is and how that can happen, then the day-to-day life can be much more simple of opening the books and reading them and letting the child interact with what they're actually hearing. And it's really amazing to see even the young child work with their materials in this way.
You said when you first saw a homeschooler, or when it first struck you, you saw the bright eyes, which is in contrast to my experience of talking to groups of young people, in which most often I'm met with a group of passive robots. Unfortunately, perhaps it's a symptom of the cell phone addiction. Did you find in your personal experience that your own kids and the kids that you've taught over the years have had their eyes brightened, so to speak?
Yes, we like to say that the children under our method are uh, interested and interesting. They really just have a desire to know, and so uh, I think in general, homeschool children end up being with a lot of different age groups around adults a lot, and that is a big part of their formation. Learning to communicate with adults, the homeschool mothers at their co-op, things like that, and the different programs that they're in, as well as older students and younger. So, in that way, it's a unique kind of socialization that is really wonderful rather than being so tracked in spending a day in a room with a bunch of 13-year-olds as a 13-year-old. And I think that really helps them flourish and feel confident in who they are. And then it just seems that because Mason believes in giving children this wide education, that the people that they meet, they can be so interested in wanting to know. They know something about that field, and they have questions. So I think that can be surprising when adults who haven't been around homeschool children meet them. And
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that in my experience that kids who are homeschooled are much better at dealing with adults. Sometimes it can be that they have difficulty dealing with their peers. You said that they interact with old kids older and younger. Is this a challenge that you've encountered, or is there a specific way that you've addressed it if you do encounter it?
well, as I said, the CMEC started out of our local cooperative, and that
Mhm.
is part of the mission of the CMEC is to help we provide community for the parents in the CMEC, but then really we want for children as much as possible to be tied in real life, not virtually, with
Mm,
other children. And so we have we call it our community learning support group, where we have a handbook on how to start a co-op and various things, or a nature club. We started our own group. It was originally called a Truth, Beauty, Goodness group, and
mm.
we studied um, just one artist a term from the time period we were studying, and one composer. We did recitation and then learned hymns and folk songs to sing together. And so these Truth, Beauty, Good News groups are such a simple way to get started with finding. Sometimes it's like the first year you find two other families, but people find that in 2 to 3 years they, are filled to capacity. So that's a nice way to begin with a local community. And then from there, usually families think about, all right, what are the subjects that would most benefit from having a dedicated teacher? And so usually it's things like Shakespeare. Then the kids get to act, and
Mm.
in a group. Mason started the students reading Plutarch in fifth grade. So moms
Wow,
always love if there's going to be one, teacher.
that's impressive. They read the original Plutarch in fifth grade,
Yes. And so Mason thought, if they can deal firsthand, but they read just one life a term.
which is the first
Day and
life that
age,
they
you
start
think
with.
like, all right, let's read Plutarch. We can sit down and read the whole book. But in that way, when they spread out like this, they're doing the life of Julius Caesar. They just, live with his
Uh-huh.
story for a whole term. And so that kind of slower pace allows for 10-year-old to really be reading something that's written at a graduate level of writing. So
I love it. I smiled when you said Plutarch. Love that guy. Also, Truth, Beauty, Goodness, Transcendentals, and then finally the folk songs. This is forming the moral imagination, which is one of the most important steps of this age of virtue development.
and it's just so much fun. I think that each week when I gather with our local group and I get to stand at the front, I have no real musical training in my background, but we just love singing these songs together, and the kids really to see their faces and how they are like belting out the song is just so rewarding.
That's great. So you started with as a homeschool. Well, you started as a teacher, then doing homeschooler. Am I understanding correctly? Now you have a leadership role in this very large organization, and if so, what is navigating that like?
Yes, well, that really has been um, the challenge is that we all know Mason, we know and have this experience now of homeschooling, and then there is this whole other side of actually running a nonprofit and dealing with our platforms and dealing with all of that behind the scenes, having our curriculum team and guide writers, all of our support personnel. So that I think has been something that I have never expected to be part of my life, as kind of thinking of this English academic background. But God really has blessed us in bringing people to the organization that have been able to help us. And we hope that kind of at this critical juncture that that we're poised to really grow, and that we'll continue to find people to help us behind the scenes.
What do you need the most in terms of leadership?
Yeah, I think of at a point of like I said, we have grown this large just organically of friends telling friends and a lot of these local communities spreading. But we would like to do a better job of being able to articulate to the larger world of what it is that we're doing, who we are, what we offer. And so all of that is, everything from our website and web design and professionalizing even more our materials, and thinking of now we have such a diverse group of families of all different faiths, and really, as I said, families in the Philippines, in Australia, South Africa, and to really, we always want to think about how we can make this a very flexible program that people can take what they need and what works for their family. So we're always thinking about that, plus more of the, how do we get training out there in a better way, a format? Not everyone wants to sit and listen to an hour lecture. Is there other ways of putting together our talks and things like that are more accessible?
Got it. Yeah, that's wonderful. In terms of the practicals of needing like a website design person or some other administrative or logistical stuff or even like specialist kind of skills, you may want to look into onlinejobs.ph.
Hmm.
So it's an excellent site I've used for my own business. You're hiring employees in the Philippines who can be either full time, part time, contract, or gig. I just pay them as contractors,
Hmm.
and they're I mean, you search so you can identify the ones that are the best, and they're very well qualified. And of course, the rates, given the standard of living in the Philippines and the currency differential, is much more affordable.
Hmm.
So that's something that has really helped my business endeavors, and hopefully it'll help yours.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we're always sensitive to is that most homeschooling families are single income, and then also we have a lot of missionary families, military families. Um, Sometimes a family their husband will lose their job, or there's illness in the family. So we wish we had a better way of being able to offer scholarships and
Mm,
understanding different pricing structures for different economies around the world, things like that really, to if there's people who want to homeschool, wouldn't want that the cost of the training and support to be the thing that holds them back, when it's going to be the
mhm,
thing that's going to be what makes them helps them to be successful. And
mhm,
just, people can feel so alone to make this what seems often like, at least to your mother-in-law, it seems like a very radical decision. And so to be able to come together and have the strength of an organization like the
mhm,
CMEC means so much. But it can often feel like, all right, we're taking on this new thing. We have to buy all of the books. Maybe we should try to, cut corners or save money in this way. And so that's, also where we would, as a nonprofit, would love to have support for. I think that others would want to help homeschooling families in this way too.
Well, from a philanthropic perspective, it seems like this would have a very high value per dollar given because I suppose it's like an initial investment of resources, but then everyone who's involved or most people who are involved in the homeschooling most directly on the local level are volunteers. They're going to be implementing that. They're going to be teaching people, and they don't need a lot of ongoing funds.
Yes, and really that we had to decide when we set up our model, but we decided to go with this flat rate to of membership, but then everything is included, that you get to come to all of you don't have to continue, oh, I do want this course, I should have to pay more for that, or these guides that will help me to teach Plutarch, I have to pay for that too. So in the end, in coming together like we are, it's a really ends up being way more affordable and so much, time saving to just have this one place to come for all of the resources, from, like I said, 12th grade of science labs and text, all the way down to how to teach reading and things like that. So
Hmm.
that right in our early days, where we had a husband and wife team that were both trained scientists and loved reading these living science books, and they would read and read and read and helped us to, and then we implemented them in our local community, saw what worked and didn't. So, and that's just one subject, but if you think across a
Hmm.
curriculum,
Yeah, it's a
it's
lot.
really it's a really neat thing.
Well, I'm hoping to start a foundation that will support people who are doing things like you. So I'll add you to the list if this gets off the ground. Hopefully we can work together. I can help that.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
Can you share with us any success stories you've seen over the years that can inspire others?
So often when we ask for testimonies, they're surprising that people have these little things that they see in their children's lives, the way that they they know the name of a wildflower or can identify a bird, or when they're in an art museum, they recognize a Giotto painting, or they know that that's Fra Angelico. So, in some ways, those are the most rewarding of the stories, but they're hard to, quantify or explain that when you're helping children to be more of the person that they're meant to be, and feel at home in the world in that way is an exciting thing. But I think for me, even more is how many parents say that they're receiving the education that they never had, and
Wonderful.
that they just, you start when your child is 6 and you read through these books all the way through,
Uh-huh.
and you end up learning, right, the thing that most of us now weren't able to have. So that also has been great. I think too, to see the interest from such a wide array of families, like I said, of different cultures, different faith backgrounds. We have moms who get out and go out and milk their cow first thing in the morning and then
Mhm.
come in and teach their children. And we have a lot of uh, professors' families where we have at the different at Notre Dame, at Franciscan, Benedictine, where we have professors coming together and saying, this is what we want for our children.
Mhm.
So I think that's a real confirmation for me too, to see that if so as a high school teacher, it would always be anytime we interacted with professors, it would be like, why aren't you guys teaching them how to write? They get here and they don't write. And we would turn around and say that to the middle school teachers, like, these kids aren't learning anything in middle school. And so if it's actually going the opposite way of um, faculty at various universities around the country wanting this for their children, I think that that's a real testament as well.
Wow. That was beautiful what you said about the parents learning for the first time. As you know, we're living in a new dark age, both intellectually and culturally. One of my hobbies is to find and resuscitate great works, or even really good works, which is a different category in my mind, that have been hidden in the new dark age. I found one recently. It's called uh, Two Little Savages. I
Mhm.
bought a copy that's from 1913. It has a handwritten dedication in it. It's a beautiful book about two kids who just love being out in the woods. And, have you heard of it?
No, no, that sounds
Okay,
great.
okay,
I
yeah,
know. Well, you'll have to
but
look at our book list to see. You'll find so many, because what we did is we started first with Mason's programs, and we had decades and decades of what she assigned and how she worked out the different books, again, from first grade all the way through 12th grade, or, the British equivalent. And sometimes we would think, oh, there's no way that this old science book would be something we could use. And then you realize, well, no, these foundational ideas haven't changed, but it's actually written in a way that it was an important scientist of the day who thought that this was fascinating and wanted children to hear right from the scientist's voice. And so they incorporate story and poetry, and they really amazed us. And same thing with geography. So a lot of times what we're doing is bringing these books back into print, but then we provide a guide along with it that explains, okay, this border actually was changed in 2018. It was also changed in 2009 and various times, since this book has been written. But then a mom feels like, okay, I can be confident that the main things here, this living voice that comes through, will captivate and make my children will love other cultures and geography, and they'll want to have that. And it's very simple to actually then give them the things like the names of capitals that have changed depending on who actually rules the country, and probably will change again in the next 50 years too. So that was, I think, an early hurdle that we had to grapple with, is in what way will we use older books that sometimes seem outdated. But of course, we use, modern scientists, from yeah, Dr. Feynman, or in physics or across the board. So it's not that we only, there's also times where people could get stuck in the mud and we only do it the way it used to be done. And we think more that's why Mason having these principles of how to approach books and education helps us to really bring what she's doing. That's what she really wanted, was to give things that are um, fresh as well as the great text, so that high schoolers read through a different Greek play every term. So they are reading these ancient stories, and we do modern plays as well. So it's neat.
Well, I'm sorry that all these CIA-initiated coups have made your job more inconvenient with having to correct all the
Exactly.
geographical changes over the years,
We're like, we'll
but I'm
never be
glad to
done
hear
writing these guides. We always are going to have to be updating them.
it. Yeah, yeah. But y'all are adapting, which is great. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with?
Well, I think if someone was listening and they have an interest in homeschooling, or maybe they are homeschooling but have felt like, oh, I just need to go with this boxed curriculum that it seems too hard, that to visit the CMEC website and our info packet, but that um, it's really having a spirit of wanting to learn and grow alongside your children that will be the thing that makes you be able to stay with it for the long haul and enjoy it. And really, in the end, this gift that, now having two students who've graduated, that we were able to have so much time together as a family and to have this close relationship among the siblings, as well as just me with them. It was a real gift, and it really, when I look back of the days where it took a lot of willpower to say, all right, yep, we are going to start at 9 a.m. and we're not going to go on a field trip or something like that. In any of those struggles, or times where a child was stuck with math, or uh, I had one child who did end up having dyslexia, things like that, that in the end, all of those challenges, um, facing them together was really worth it, for to have such a beautiful life together, and to think of that, really that time was such a gift.
Beautiful. That's what it's about in the end, is those relationships.
Mhm.
And I congratulate you on your magnanimity in embarking on this huge project, which I'm sure you didn't appreciate the scope of when you started. But it's due to magnanimous moms like you that Western civilization continues and is strengthened. So
Yes,
please keep up the
and
good work.
really, it's a whole team to think that our organization is all, at this point in time, all run by homeschooling moms. That is also just an unexpected joy in my life, to have such an amazing group of women from around the country. It's really remarkable.
Absolutely. Thank God. Well, thank you so much, Amy, and keep up the great work.
All right. Well, thank you so much.